Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Samira Pardhanani, Chair of NAFSA's International Education Leadership Knowledge Community. Thank you for joining us for this collegial conversation with Jolynn Shoemaker from UC Davis, focused on advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals through international education. Jolynn is the co-author of NAFSA's publication on the SDGs called Global Goals, Global Education, Advancing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the new digital download, Starting with the SDGs, a practical framework. We know many institutions are thinking about how or even whether to engage in the SDG conversation, especially in the US's current context. It is worth mentioning that many students want this conversation and these changes to occur as they try to implement these SDGs at a grassroots level within their clubs, etc. We're very excited to explore both global perspectives and practical applications in this conversation today. So Jolynn, welcome, and I'm going to start with question number one, if I may. At a very basic level, what are the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, and the 2030 Agenda?
Thanks so much, Samira. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development includes 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, as we call them, and 169 targets, and were agreed upon by all countries in 2015. This provides a really powerful statement of global consensus. The SDGs cover a broad range of issues, ranging from poverty to hunger to climate to inequalities. And this agenda brings together the environmental, the social, the economic, recognizing that all of these aspects are intersectional and they're indivisible. The agenda applies to everyone, all countries, all contexts, and requires the participation of all of our sectors in society. So that really creates a common framework for institutions around the world. And the other thing that's very important about this agenda is that it is anchored in universal principles that apply to all countries. Those include human rights, gender equality, and a concept called leave no one behind. And the meaning of that is that the countries around the world have committed to address the needs of those left furthest behind first.
Thank you, Jolynn, for sharing that. It's really useful to understand more of the framework as well as just kind of get a holistic view on that. So I'd like to know, can you please talk a bit about U.S. institutions, since we're a little late to the SDGs and compared to many of our overseas counterparts? Can you speak to this context and share what motivated UC Davis to engage in this work?
Sure. So in the global context, many countries around the world, ranging across Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, have really embraced and integrated the SDGs and their targets into their national strategies, into their plans, into their policies. The majority of the countries around the world have also formally shared their progress on the SDGs one or more times through voluntary reviews. The US, unfortunately, is one of the few exceptions around the world. In addition, the agenda has really been increasingly embraced at the local levels around the world. There are now more than 300 voluntary reviews from local governments, and that includes some cities inside the United States and one state in the US as well. So after the SDGs were agreed upon by all the countries in 2015, unfortunately, the US government was not very proactive about articulating how this agenda fit into either domestic policies or international policy priorities. And as a result, there's been a general lack of awareness among the American public about this agenda. The current administration has made some public statements criticizing the SDGs, and that's created further confusion about whether how the US stands on this agenda, as well as other international commitments. So the higher education sector has also been pretty slow to recognize and integrate the SDGs. Although in many institutions, there is ongoing work that is really contributing to this agenda. It only has pockets of awareness in many cases about the actual agenda. At UC Davis, we began to focus on the SDGs because we felt that this agenda really provided a framework that resonates with our mission, our institutional identity, principles, our strategic goals, our strengths, and the interests of our campus community as well. So we started getting involved with the SDGs through awareness raising on our campus, through many discussions with other universities around the world, and active participation in global networks. And that led us to develop a voluntary university review, which we used as a process to start to collaborate with other units around campus and to begin to align our work at UC Davis with the goals and start to highlight where we were having innovative approaches to some of those topics. And then these activities led to development of more institutional strategies and programs over the years with different members of our campus community and our external partners. And so we've continued to learn from these experiences and integrate the SDGs into new areas of work, finding ways to link our efforts both on campus and locally with the global as well. So it's really an ongoing process of assessing our lessons learned along the way and then identifying new entry points.
Thank you, Jolynn. Do you have any specific case studies or examples that stand out to you from the book? You mentioned working with a lot of stakeholders and getting more engagement. And also, what did you learn from others while the book was being developed?
Great. Yeah. So when we started working on putting together this book, Global Goals, Global Education, we felt it was really important to profile a range of institutions, countries, and approaches around the world. And so the book includes 16 chapters from 16 different locations around the world, reflecting contexts in Latin America, Europe, Africa, Asia Pacific, Middle East, and North America. And while we were working on the book, one thing we observed was that efforts in less resourced institutions are often invisible on this agenda. So we felt that higher education really needs to share the experiences and learn from the experiences from many different contexts to inform the overall sector. At this core, the agenda really is about individuals with creative ideas and motivation to collaborate. And it was really inspiring to see what can happen when individuals come together to try something new. So there are a few examples I can highlight from the book. One is in many universities, strategic planning processes have actually facilitated deeper thinking about the SDGs and how they fit with identity and priorities. And in many cases, this then leads to new champions and oftentimes new structures to support SDG integration. We also saw that specific SDGs can provide focal points for strategic direction. And this was especially useful in the cases we saw for smaller institutions, which sometimes choose to focus on key issues that resonate with their campuses, like zero hunger or reduced inequalities. Mapping has also been a big part of the processes in many institutions as well. It is very helpful to start to gather information, align, and see and help the campus community really see the relevance of the SDGs. And the mapping processes also often reveal hidden connection points across our institutional silos and can seed new forms of collaborations. And then we've also seen through our work on the book that applying the SDGs in teaching and learning is so valuable for students and faculty. So the SDGs resonate deeply with students, and youth engagement is a core part of this global agenda. So the SDGs naturally fit with global learning and offer so many possibilities both inside the classroom and beyond that. And the book also showed the very positive impact that occurs when higher education institutions deeply engage with different communities on these common goals, and that can look very different in different contexts. The book shows some variations in what that engagement can look like, ranging from working closely with Indigenous communities to projects with local organizations to regional initiatives and international groupings as well. So the book really showed that when we open the space with the SDGs, we can really break out of some of our silos and we can start exploring new models for our engagement.
Thank you, Jolynn. How can international educators and their institutions who may be doing work that relates to the SDGs but are not using the framework benefit from these resources?
Sure. So higher education as a sector is really at an inflection point. We realize we need to engage more effectively on the pressing issues that are important to people, to show the relevance of higher education in our communities, to be at the table for global discussions, and to better prepare our students for the future that lies ahead. At the same time, the SDGs, unfortunately, are not where we would like them to be in terms of progress. Only about 17% of the SDG targets are on track. So it's really imperative that higher education steps up and helps move the needle in the right direction for the world. We fortunately already have the mechanisms on hand through our teaching, our research, and our service missions. So sometimes there is a hesitancy to utilize the SDGs, whether that's for political or other considerations. And we've seen that champions in different universities have really found ways that they can still pursue the same common principles and goals in those cases. Ultimately, the agenda is really about finding new ways to bring people together and institutions together to address systemic problems in our communities and the world, and do so in a way that's really reflecting human rights, equality, and inclusion. So we developed these resources with the recognition that higher education institutions are all in their own contexts. They have unique histories, priorities, identities, challenges. So the resources can't and should not be prescriptive. The book is really highlighting diverse approaches from different contexts, and how we organized it was according to several categories. So we looked at strategy building and what has been done there, teaching approaches, research, and engaging communities. And that allows readers to really dig in to areas that are of highest interest for their own contexts. The chapters are each authored by individuals at those different institutions, so they provide really nuanced insights on the steps that were taken, the rationale for those activities, and what lessons were learned along the way. The new publication from NASA called Starting with the SDGs, a Practical Framework, is meant to help individuals assess their own contexts, navigate their barriers and opportunities, and really take some initial steps to integrate the SDGs. And our hope is that these resources provide some accessible, actionable ideas that can be informative, but also be adapted to different contexts. There is something that can be done everywhere to promote the SDGs. It just will look different depending on the institution and the location.
Thank you, Jolynn. I have a question. What advice do you have for people on how to get started, including those that might work in a one-person office or those who work in smaller institutions?
Great question. I think a lot of times it's helpful to start by thinking personally where you sit, what your position is, what your office is doing, and those relevant portfolios of work, and then start to ask some questions. Could the SDGs fit into some of the existing activities that you already do in your office or unit? Could there be synergies between existing activities and the SDGs, and what could those look like? Are there opportunities to pilot, even at a very small level, some ways to integrate the SDGs? And are there people that are ready and willing and motivated to take it forward? In most examples from the book that we documented, it was really individuals and institutions that identified a window of opportunity. Sometimes it was a strategic planning process. Sometimes it was the development of a grant program. Sometimes it was designing course curricula or relooking at course curriculum. And those individuals really found entry points to start to include the SDGs. So you can consider starting with something small and then building from there. The work does not always require new resources. Often it's a matter of looking at what we already have going on and doing some experimentation with what we already have and can leverage.
Thank you, Jolynn. That was very insightful. What are some actionable steps to help institutions or individuals achieve some of these goals?
Yeah, sure. So partnerships are really at the core of this agenda, both inside and outside the institution. And as higher education professionals, we are constantly interacting inside and outside of our institutions in various ways. So the SDGs really provide an opportunity where we can take those interactions and start thinking about how we can strengthen partnerships with the SDGs. They often, using this agenda, can create a clear focus for our collaborations, a good starting point, because they do apply to every country and context. And they can really encourage us to think creatively about different types of partners. So if we look at the intersection of the SDGs with different types of activities that universities do, research, teaching, service, and our own operations internally, for example, we can start to see different types of campus and local collaboration opportunities in addition to our international activities. So we've found that participation in networks and consortia can also be really critical to leverage strengths and to make this truly a collective effort. Those relationships, those platforms that help us build those relationships and idea generation can really help us expand beyond our own capabilities on any one campus, come together and have a much bigger impact globally.
Thank you so much, Jolynn, for sharing these global perspectives and for helping us think about how international education can advance the SDGs in ways that make sense within our own institutional and the national context that we operate in. I also wanted to thank Dr. Kathy Lee Arcuino and Dr. Ann Themistocleus for your questions, the great questions that you asked. As we've heard today, many institutions around the world are deeply engaged in this work. And even in the United States, where the conversation can be slower or more challenging, there are meaningful entry points. There are meaningful partnerships and opportunities already emerging. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I encourage you to explore the book, Global Goals, Global Education, as well as the new downloadable guide called Starting with the SDGs, which provide practical examples and approaches for institutions of all sizes. We hope today's conversation will help further these discussions on your campuses and across our IEL-KC community. Thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day.